All right, good morning, Doug. We're back with more of the passing parade that's happening before us, getting worse and worse by the day, but interesting, I think.
Yeah, and the worst or the best, depending on your level of amusement, is still to come with the conventions and the election and all this type of thing. But well, all right, just to hold the fort in the meantime, though, of course, I looked at what the Encyclopedia Britannica had to say about what happened this day in history. And I'm informed that we're still in Black History Month. So perhaps that's an excuse for this. But the way it does, the way the Encyclopedia Britannica online does it is they send you two pictures of people, and then they give you like a half a dozen smaller things under that, the two most important things. And so the two people that were pictured were Robert Mugabe and Malcolm X. And I think this is worth talking about, quite frankly, because I don't believe that 1 out of 1,000 Americans know who Robert Mugabe was. Uh, but in fact, I don't know how many of our listeners who are much more sophisticated than the average bear might know who he was. But I have some familiarity, as it turns out, with Robert Mugabe. So I was not flummoxed. Um, when the Rhodesian, um, when the Rhodesians were fighting to maintain Rhodesia uh, against the natives, there were two groups in Rhodesia. There was Mugabe's group and oh God, was it Nkrumah? Yeah, I think it was Joshua Nkrumah. Two groups, because it turns out that the geographical area of Rhodesia, or today's Zimbabwe, is populated by two native groups. One is the Shona, and the other is the Ndebele. Now, who cares? Well, I'll tell you why I care. Because during that time, during the war, I spent a lot of time in Rhodesia and went all over the place and met all kinds of people and had my first book, The International Man, published there and became a little bit of a minor national personality because I was on all their media, such as it was, at television and radio and newspapers. Okay. So anyway, the Shona are the majority group, and that was Mugabe's group. I later bought a uh, a small container of Shona stone artwork, which is just fantastic. I mean, it's a tradition among the Shona tribes there to carve out of stone. And some of these things are just brilliant. So
Hmm.
I have them all in Argentina, of all places now. Okay, Shonas. Uh, and the Ndebelés are kind of interesting. And that was Nkrumah's group. They're basically Zulus, but Zulus that aren't in South Africa, but are in the geographical area of Zimbabwe. So in the Encyclopedia Britannica article talking about Robert Mugabe, who was just a criminal, he wound up killing, Nkrumah killed about 30,000. That's the number that I understand. It wasn't anywhere in the article in the Encyclopedia Britannica. The fact that these two groups, the Shona and the Ndebele, were at each other's throats, and
Hmm.
the Ndebele, the Zulus, lost because they were just overwhelmed in size. About 30,000 of them were wiped out. So anyway, it goes on to talk uh, about Mugabe, and I was going to meet Mugabe. He died in Singapore, incidentally. And I was at the time hanging around with, this is terrible that I can't remember his name. I'll think of it in a moment. Well, what should I, the head of the central bank of Zimbabwe, who printed the $100 trillion bill. And the guy that ran the central bank, he was Mugabe's personal banker as well as running the central bank. And went to his house a number of times. And we ate out together and had just generally a fine time. And I'm so embarrassed that I can't think of his name.
Gideon,
It's hmm?
Gideon Gono.
Gideon Gono. You're quite correct. And Gideon gave me, this is some background to the death of Mugabe, okay? Gideon gave me a paper that he wrote, and it was in manuscript form, actually, it was typed, as to why Zimbabwe should go to a gold Zimbabwe dollar. So, and I asked, well, Gideon, this is very sound stuff. Why did you print up a $100 trillion bill? And he said, we had to pay the army. We had to give them something, and we didn't have anything. So yes, that's why we printed up the $100 trillion bill. Now, these things are worth toilet paper, but my understanding, I could look, I guess I've got a few of them. They're worth like $6 or $8 or $10 the trade, because they're actually, it's a fairly good looking piece of currency. And
It's funny that the
Yeah.
guy who was behind it, the printing, actually knew that it was destructive the whole time.
yeah, you'd think that this central banker would just be a low-life criminal that didn't understand economics at all, but Gideon Gono actually did, even though he had to print up the $100 trillion bill. Now, that is a little known fact. So in any event, Mugabe, I would have met Mugabe. Gideon was going to introduce me to him, but he was in Singapore for medical reasons, and he died there. So I never got to meet the old criminal, which would have been fun. I mean, just a cocktail party conversation, because 1 out of 1,000 Americans only know who he was, and I can say I met him. Anyway, all right. So Mugabe was one person that the Encyclopedia Britannica was putting up there as somebody that you should be aware of the fact he was born on this day. The other person, very different, but also Black, is Malcolm X. And I listened to a series of speeches that Malcolm X gave, and I was mightily impressed. This guy was actually a libertarian. He was actually probably an ANCAP if he'd had a little bit more chance to read stuff. So, and you had the same impression, I think.
I did. I mean, he was, when I grew up, the impression I had about him was that he was bad and dangerous and a problem. That's what was kind of the impression I had. But whenever I've heard, and I've not read much but I've seen a few of his speeches and a couple of his interviews, and every one of those impressed me, honestly. It was a clear, concise thinker and a dangerous thinker. So
Yeah, and no wonder he got assassinated, because his views were not the views of the rest of the management of the Nation of Islam.
yeah, or just the Black community, whatever that is exactly. You need the Jesse Jacksons instead to lead the cause, people like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry that Malcolm X has joined the ranks of the departed. And anyway, that was 1965 when Muhammad Ali was coming up too, who I'm also a fan of. But I'm not a fan of the fact that Encyclopedia Britannica has all these Black people just because it's Black History Month. The third Black person that they had was Barbara Jordan. And I'll once again speculate that not 1 out of 1,000 Americans know who Barbara Jordan was.
I never heard of her.
Well, yeah, I barely heard of her, but the name rang a bell. And the Encyclopedia Britannica says she was the first Black congresswoman from the Deep South. Well, not the first Black congresswoman, but the first one from the Deep South. I guess that's especially,
Yeah, not just the South. You have to it's basically it's super regional to Deep South.
yeah. So this must make her extra special. But, you know, absolutely everybody who's Black and in Congress is a socialist or other type of criminal personality. So, and this is especially shocking because here's the encyclopedia putting these Black people, good, bad, or indifferent, up there. When what else happened on this day? Well, today was the day that in 1848 that Marx and Engels published the Communist Manifesto. I'd say that's a big deal. I think that's kind of like front page stuff as opposed to, you know, below the fold stuff.
Yeah, but they're, you know, they're not Black. So, I mean, it can't. It's
Oh,
Black History Month. Yeah.
no, they're
Can't do
not.
that.
And sometime we'll have to go over the Communist Manifesto and see exactly what Marx and Engels were proposing as what should be done, to use a phrase that Lenin popularized later, to set up a communist country. And by God, it's all happened in the United States. I mean, sure, we got the Declaration of Independence and things of that nature. But if you read, we'll have to do this at some point.
We should do this. This would be good.
Communist, yeah, it's all there. And the average American doesn't have a clue. And the other thing that the encyclopedia pointed out was the Battle of Verdun started today in 1916. And about 1 million people died in that battle. Completely pointless. Of course, World War I was pointless. But anyway, that's the other thing that happened today. So that's what I learned today from the Encyclopedia Britannica
Well,
online.
I've got a couple news items that might be worth talking about. These things have been people have seen some of these, I'm sure, but you know, the one that's on both of our radars, the new act this bill is being pushed through Congress, which we first talked about this idea in September of last year, the idea that these migrants would eventually be drafted into the military. And so there's this new bill that's called, of course, the title tells you a lot. It's called the Courage to Serve Act. You know, and it's basically it's designed to
Love the
give
titles they give these things.
exactly. It's like Heroes in the Making Act. I mean, you know, it's like but it basically, you know, it does exactly this. It's designed to solve the two different challenges we face today, which is the migrants, and number two, our military shortfall in a practical way, they say. And you know, I think the always focused on the practical solution. Once you create an environment where you only have bad choices because you've done everything wrong, you know, then the practical solution is always pretty awful. It's just like our elections, right? I mean, a practical solution is again, it's Trump over Biden. That's the practical solution. It's still pretty bad. I mean, we're in a pretty bad state.
Actually,
So,
it's worse because everything that I hear from people that are in the know that I talk to is it's not going to be Trump versus Biden. It's going to be Trump versus Big Mike.
yeah, I think so. And this is one we've been talking about for a long time. I mean, your wife first mentioned this to me probably 2 years ago. That this is what she thought, and I thought it was so wild and out there. But now on the cover of, or not on the cover, but on Newsweek's website, it says Michelle Obama is the favorite to replace Joe Biden if he drops out. So, and betting markets also. So it's not, you know, it's not just. I mean, a lot of people are saying it now. I don't know. It's almost a foregone conclusion. It's weird.
Well, Biden will drop out, and I guess Big Mike will replace him. But if for any reason she's elected, it's going to be Obama on steroids. And this is, incidentally, not a new, but it's a very disturbing trend in American politics. It's that it seems like the American people want a dynasty. Like we had a dynasty of Bushes, Bush 1 and Baby Bush, and Kennedys, of course,
Tried for the
outstanding.
Clintons. We tried for the Clintons.
Tried for the Clintons. exactly. And, you know, the daughter of the Clinton family, there's an old joke. Once again, I just got to tell you this joke. Chelsea, uh, it was funny at the time, but nobody knows who the characters are anymore. And Chelsea's has a face job, a plastic surgery to
Hmm.
improve her looks. But the question is, why is Chelsea Clinton so ugly? And the answer is because Janet Reno's her father. Nobody, people have forgotten who Janet Reno is now, but
That's a person we should not forget. That woman is responsible for all kinds of terrible things, from Waco, Ruby Ridge. I mean, she was the person in charge of those
no,
disasters.
a real criminal personality and a good buddy of Hillary's. So anyway, uh, where were
I
we?
hadn't heard that one actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So
Listen, I told that to a men's group that I was a member of in Aspen, and a lot of them didn't like it because a lot of them, of course, this is Aspen, for God's sake, the People's Republic of, they didn't like it at all.
no, and making fun of the poor girl, they probably thought at the time too. It's like
Yeah,
too easy of a target.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I mean, it's not her fault that she's homely,
But
but
but the
she's
real
rich.
joke
I
isn't on
mean,
her. The real she's not really the she's a minor character in the joke. The joke is really about Janet Reno and Hillary. I mean, that's what makes it funny.
that was a real joke, exactly. But when you have to explain a joke like that to the people you're telling it to, it kind of
It's not fun.
deflates the joke. So,
Exactly. Well, so yeah, there's dynastic ambitions in the U.S. We like the dynasty. We want kings who
yeah,
aren't
there are
rulers.
others. And because, oh goodness, a lot of these politicians, sons and daughters, marry each other. I can't give you a list right now, but over the years, I've noted that this seems to happen a lot. So,
Well, wouldn't also the Roosevelt family, right? FDR certainly rode on the popularity of Teddy Roosevelt, right?
who is his cousin?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is actually nothing new. So maybe people want a king, and when things get screwed up bad enough over the next few years, there will be a guy on a white horse who will act as a king and say, "Don't worry, I'll tighten things up. I'll straighten them out." It's going to happen.
Yep. And I think my brother-in-law sent me a message the other day just talking about, it was actually just sending me a comedy clip, but in the comedy clip, the guy's talking about how freedom is maybe the last generation they'll actually even know what freedom is. He's making a joke of it, but he's like, do you think it will be like the last generation that really knows what freedom is? And I said, I think we don't know what freedom is, actually. I mean, like today, it's far less free than it was when I was a kid. I
Oh,
know
yeah.
that's less
Yeah,
free
well,
than it was. And, part of the joke in there is like, people wouldn't even know that it's not free. They don't even know or the way things could be. And I think it's because humans don't really actually care about freedom. Not really. I don't think. I think for the most part, what I was telling him is I said, I think that most people view freedom on the same level as they might view honor or truth. Like they're like good ideas, but not very practical.
yeah.
So,
What's practical is three hots and a cot and being reasonably comfortable. I mean, that's
yep.
when you get right down to it. And he was a famous philosopher who I cannot remember his name, but well known. And the quote was to the effect of, "No man is less free than somebody who doesn't know that he's not free." And that pretty well describes Americans today. They think they're free.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they even the brand, land of the free, home of the brave, right? It's a
Yeah, hey,
branding thing.
you can't have a revolution when you live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. That's crazy talk.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Let's see. So they have the migrant thing, which is this Courage to Serve Act. And I talked to two people in Denver this week. because as I used to live there, and I still read local news there, and I keep in touch with people who live there. And they both told me two different stories that they have seen recently of like the effect of migrants around them. And one was uh, a friend of his was flying back to Denver on a United flight, and on the United flight were, he said, 30 or so Venezuelan migrants that all, like had these folders they were carrying and were all, they were clearly legit being moved, as part of a logistics chain. And one of them on the flight, a woman, threw a fit because she wanted free food on the flight and was demanding and like really getting a little hysterical about it. And someone, bilingual person, interceded and kind of got her calmed down and got her, I don't know, maybe she got extra bags of pretzels or something to get her calm for that time. But he said it was really jarring to his friend who was on there, like all these people there, and then one of them like just totally losing their shit on the flight by demanding something and not getting it.
Well, the airline stewardess, and I know you're not supposed to call them stewardesses anymore, or even flight attendants. What are you supposed to call them? There's something that's replaced flight attendants. Anyway, uh, there should have moved that person up to first class, treated her in the manner to which she's clearly becoming accustomed.
Exactly. Exactly. So that was one story, and the other one is my friend of mine who lives in Denver, and there's officially 40,000 Venezuelan migrants that have officially been accepted into Denver this year, and they're housed. It's destroying the city budget. They're redirecting funds from normal city services to housing, and it's turned into a giant grift. I mean, where you have, which no surprise, you have these faith-based organizations popping up saying, hey, we've got space in our auditorium, let's bring in some mattresses in here. And then they get paid nightly, like a hotel for these people. And then of course they get to say they're doing the Lord's work, they're making the world better, and they just need more resources. So these vested interests that are all grifters in this whole scheme, they definitely don't want it to stop. They want the problem to grow because it's working for them. Meanwhile, the city's decaying. And my friend tells me, is just quick examples. He said, I get Amazon packages stolen off my porch all the time. But if I don't move my car to the other side of the street on the second Tuesday of the month, I get a ticket because I have to move for the street sweeper. And he's like, it's just insane. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there might be some risk and might be some trouble in finding out who actually committed a theft. I mean, but putting a ticket on a car of a law-abiding citizen, that's easy. That's great.
Exactly.
And the other thing is that law, what is it? Courage to serve, whatever phony
Yeah.
name they gave it. So this is extraordinarily dangerous where the armed forces are already being corrupted many, many different ways. And now you invite foreigners in that don't share anything about American values and American culture. And you serve them in, you train them, you give them a gun, and they'll take orders. I mean, this is, if we have real bad guys in office, the army will, unlike in the past, will direct their force against Native American citizens. In the past, the army were always other Americans, so they probably wouldn't shoot you without at least thinking twice. But, these foreigners have a different culture and different everything. Hey, we're the enemy.
Yeah, that's one of the Congressman Pat Ryan, who's one of the co-sponsors of this bipartisan bill, said, this is his quote from there. He goes, I know it firsthand. There's no higher honor than serving your country in uniform. If folks have the courage to raise their right hand, swear an oath to protect and defend this nation, and put their lives on the line, then they sure as hell deserve an opportunity to become an American citizen.
Mm. This guy ought to be hung by his heels from a lamppost. That's just shocking, using that emotive rhetoric to essentially peddle lies, because that's not the way this is going to work out, or is intended to work out, quite frankly.
And I wonder when there's, we were talking about this earlier, that would they have to speak English if they're serving? Well, they might, they will, they'd have to speak some English once they're integrated into the armed forces. But you have to imagine when they're swearing the oath when they first enter, I don't even know if they'll speak English by then.
Yeah, and the way it works is they all hang out with each other, quite frankly. Uh, it's natural. Because I can say from going to school, in high school, the Spanish-speaking guys from Mexico always used to hang out with each other. And a lot of them didn't learn really, even in a high school, for God's sake. It was a boarding military school, didn't really learn to speak good English because they were all just hanging out with each other and speaking Spanish. And when I was going to school in Switzerland, my junior year, uh, there was a tendency for all of us Americans to hang out with each other because we could speak English. It was easier than learning French. Well, I did, but that's what happens. So these guys are gonna, get fleek up and hatch schemes to enrich themselves, and it's just natural.
It's natural. Yep. And it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous. And, they want to use the armed forces in weird, unusual ways too. There's this article I saw today on NBC News. It says the title or the headline is "The call for National Guard to help with high school violence stirs controversy in Massachusetts." So apparently the student violence increase is so big at this Brockton High School that some school committee members are asking for additional help to monitor the students. And they actually wrote a letter to the governor trying to get them to bring in the National Guard for it. And this is two paragraphs. Let me just read it real quick because it's worth understanding the message that they sent to the governor asking for us. They say, recognizing the gravity of the situation, we are formally requesting that you reach out to Governor Healy and request the deployment of the National Guard to assist in restoring order, ensuring the safety of all individuals on the school premises, and implementing measures to address the root causes of the issues we are facing. We understand the gravity of this request and the importance of collaboration between local and state authorities. The National Guard's expertise in crisis management and community support can offer a vital temporary intervention, allowing for a comprehensive long-term solution to be developed in consultation with all relevant stakeholders. So that's the request for the National Guard they put in.
That really is what's so stupid. Is it more stupid or more insane? I mean, what is a National Guardsman standing in the hall with a bunch of kids that are chimping out? What's he going to do? Is he going to fix bayonets? I don't think the M4 takes a bayonet. I don't think it has a bayonet fitting anymore. Is he going to walk up to a couple of kids having an altercation and butt stroke them both to get them back in order? The National Guardsman is totally unsuited for restoring order with kids in a high school. It's crazy.
100%. I mean, saying I was in the Guard, so saying that the National Guard's expertise in crisis management and community support, like making that claim, no, there was nothing. Those are not two things I would ever put on the what we're good at list for the National Guard. Maybe it's changed. Maybe they're better at painting schools and talking things out with the community members now.
Yeah, and of course, it has nothing to do with the root cause of the problem, which is the crazy philosophies which have insinuated themselves throughout society, where kids think it's okay to do something like that when they're at school, and the fact that their parents are incapable of disciplining them or instilling any proper values with them at home, and the teachers aren't respected. So how's a bunch of National Guardsmen hanging around wondering, what the hell am I supposed to do? You're going to help? These people are nuts. I mean, they don't understand anything about the problem.
No, so you imagine this is just, I mean, these are just some people on the, on the board or whatever for that school. So they don't know a lot, but I would assume anyway. But even the idea though that they look to the military in any way to address these kinds of problems just shows you the way that if the military will likely be misused in the future. And if you put a bunch of new I don't know, legitimacy seeking migrants in there that are just, they'll be following orders, doing all kinds of crazy activities. I mean, it just can go into weird places.
Yeah, the American public's confidence is misplaced in the military because it ain't what it used to be. Not that it was ever, but anyway, it's much worse than it used to be, I think, and there's lots of indications that that's true. But uh, I've thought for some time that we're due for a proper general. When things start falling apart, people look to generals as being disciplined and having the kind of virtues to get all these crazy chimpanzees in order. Now, I buy the argument that it'll be Trump and Michelle. So maybe it won't be a general this year, but assuming we have elections in 28, I'm not even assuming we have elections in 24, frankly. I'll bet a general is going to have his day in the sun, a left-wing general
Yeah,
or a
and
right-wing general.
people will be demanding it, because one of the problems in these schools is the fact that there's zero consequences for conduct. So like they can't even expel kids, that are a problem. They're constant troublemakers in school. So they can't even just eliminate them from the environment. And I think people are going to be demanding, a daddy to take charge and make it so people don't steal the Amazon packages off their porch, or, you know, I mean,
Or their
all of these
or their
things.
car while they're in it, especially.
Yep. Yep. And people are going to demand it, and they're going to be grateful for daddy to intervene and set some
Yeah.
ground rules.
Well, I'm increasingly happy to be here in Uruguay, and I'm increasingly edgy about spending the northern summer in the US. Because I gotta believe, here we are, we're almost in March, but I gotta believe things are gonna start getting wild and woolly.
Yeah, I think I mean, it seems like they will, if this migrant situation is going to explode. I don't know how, but it's going to explode. I think we talked about before, the urban blacks seeing these migrants being treated this way, the people are poor and suffering, and other people being held up. I don't know.
Yeah, if I was an urban black and was down on my heels, and I know these guys are getting debit cards and all these other freebies, hotels that have maid service and that to live in, I'm going to be a little bit restive and a little bit unhappy. And the other thing is that all the migrants apparently have cell phones. And if I was a migrant, first thing I would do is I would call back home and I would say, uh, Mohammed, Masood, Abdullah, you must come here immediately. This is unbelievable. They give you free money and they're going to pile in. So the 300,000 in January, I don't doubt it'll go to 500 or 600,000 coming in at the border. Now, where are you going to put all those people?
Do
They
you
got to
think that'll
sleep
be
someplace.
you think we'll see those numbers this year, as big as that this year? 500,000?
I think this will be the last year that they're actively invited in, because if the Democrats win, and I think there's an excellent chance that they'll arrange that to happen one way or another. They don't want to destroy their own gravy train, so they'll put an end to it after the elections, and Trump certainly will. But
Mm.
I think the numbers are going to get up to 500,000, 600,000 a month before then. Now, where do you put all those basically young males? I mean, they don't want to sleep on a gym floor forever. I mean, they're just not interested in that. Where are you going to put them? I think there's going to be a movement to, if you have an empty guest house, well, you've got to invite them in, or maybe even a spare. This sounds completely insane, completely crazy. But when you've got millions and millions of these people, where are you going to put them?
Well, there have been some cases of this. There was a case highlighted in the news last week where a Boston couple brought in a family of four into their house, and highly publicized. And then there was another one I saw also on the television, or I saw a clip from the television. And then I think even Governor Whitmer from Michigan was encouraging that now. I know that where my brother-in-law lives in Naperville in Illinois, that one of the city council members there suggested that they do this, that people bring them into their extra bedrooms and stuff. So I think all they got to do is let them in on the grift, though, the same grift that these religious organizations have, or the nonprofits that are all earning money on it. And you just say, hey, let them in your house and we'll pay you instead of paying these hotels that we're paying now. And I think people will do it. I think that's how you get there.
Yeah, another Zoom call that I was on yesterday, I'm on it every week. One of the guys pointed out that there's a city, little town of about 15,000 people in the area of Bangor, Maine. And he said, this is firsthand information, that there were 2,000 Somalis that were imported to this little town of 15,000 people. Now, he didn't know anything more beyond that, and I can't remember the name of the town, but this is crazy. 2,000 Somalis that don't speak English in a little town in Maine. How can this possibly end well?
Yeah, and of all places to move them. I don't know. I don't know why they go there. Yeah, actually, I remember seeing an article about this, or maybe it was a like a documentary kind of thing, um, a while back. I mean, because I think they started coming, when the U.S. was involved in the stuff in Somalia. Same as the resettlement that happened in Minneapolis. It was kind of around that same time.
Hmm.
Is it Lewistown, Maine? I think it's
Was it
Lewistown.
Lewistown, Maine? I don't recall what it was. But importing people of an alien religion, alien race, alien culture from an active war zone where they're used to perpetrating and at least seeing lots of violence, that's probably not a bad idea, because these people have picked up some bad habits.
Yeah, and I mean they're entirely. I mean, a lot of them at least are wards of the state. So I
I
don't
think they're
know.
all wards of the state, because
Mm.
who's going to hire them when they don't have any qualifications, including speaking English, okay? And they don't have social security cards. And it's illegal to hire anybody that doesn't have a social security number. So even if you want to be a good Samaritan and hire them, it's pretty risky. You're breaking the law. Maybe they'll turn you in for a bounty for hiring an
Right. For
illegal.
hiring them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like double dipping. These people are going to be quite capable of that. I mean,
Oh,
they're not stupid. They're actually very clever. They've had to survive under very rough circumstances. They're going to pick up every scam they can.
they know how to work the system, and that's how they got here. That's why they saw the scam, the system that we're set up with. We're funding all this, and they go, they're just being induced to. I mean, they're going, this is they're induced to do it. I mean, we're bribing them to do it, and I think, again, I think they're going to bribe people to put them in their homes. I think that's what they're going to do, because I think they're going to run a room at all these hotels, and I think they're basically going to they're planting the seeds for the last couple months, suggesting that people have them in their homes. That seems such a terrible idea, but the economy is not going so well, and I mean, everyone could use an extra $500 a month, right?
Yeah, except uh, related to this is the fact that a lot of these migrants that are tired of living in gyms have realized that if they go through the real estate uh, for sale ads, find a house that's for sale, break into it, squat, and it takes months, both as a legal reality and a practical reality, to evict them. That's that's sweet.
Yep. Yeah, not only that, and if they were subsidizing these migrants with individuals, they would all be subject to those laws where they won't be able to evict them. So imagine them being not in a house that's for sale but empty, but in your house, and you can't get rid of them.
That's right. How are you going to? I mean, you probably can't even call the local cop to evict them. He's not going to know what the law is. And
No, and they could file a restraining order on you, you know?
yeah, of course. Unhand that gentle migrant. He's got a
Yeah.
right to stay here. No, this is really fascinating. It could get, it's not going to get better because there's going to be millions more of them piling into the country in the next few months.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah. And holy shit, this is gonna be so
But
wild.
we'll be watching it on our widescreens in Uruguay, not out our front windows in the US.
Yeah, agreed. I just say if when the government offers you money, do not accept it. So if they're offering you, you know, temporary, you can have this per like use your house as an Airbnb temporarily. Like, do not accept their money. I think you just cannot
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, the government programs are always temporary, except they never, ever are.
And there's always consequences if you accept the offer. Just like they're going after people hard for the paycheck protection program and all this, you know, the stuff, the people who took money with COVID. I mean, they're really looking for fraud in that really hard, and they're going to find people. They're going to find a lot, you know, that it shouldn't have taken the money, but
Yeah, well, I feel sorry for these people, the Americans that are duped. A lot of them are nice people, but you know, on the other hand, to me, the most basic of all virtues is justice, and justice is getting what you deserve. So if you do something stupid, yeah, reality should punish you.
there are consequences. Well, maybe we're entering the age of consequences, Doug.
Or maybe what Robert Heinlein said in some of his later books, we're entering the crazy years.
The crazy years, even better. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. We'll be back on Friday with questions from members of the file. Thanks so
Yep,
much.
that's a pleasure, Matt. Thanks.